In 1979, a startup company, Arbusto Energy, began raising funds for oil exploration through private offerings. And the company was run by a young Texan who had connections in the oil industry, and it was George W. Bush. James Bath, a Texas millionaire investor and businessman who is close friends to the Bush family, became one of the company's very first investors. However, the company was in desperate need for future prospects overseas in order to compete in the open market. Bath was a representative for a Saudi businessman. His name was Salem Bin Laden, and he is the oldest son of Mohammad Bin Laden, the father of Osama bin Laden and Salem Bin Laden. And it was through James Bath that the Saudi Bin Laden Group, the construction magnate that Mohammed bin Laden created in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, began funding Bush's company. And so this was a great jumpstart into the company itself financially. And through this acquaintance, Bath eventually became Bin Laden's business representative, Salem Bin Laden's business representative inside the United States, representing him in a number of business deals, including real estate, the aircraft services, and banking. And so this friendship slowly began to form into an intricate singularity. Bin Laden would actually be invited to the Texas ranch. Salem Bin Laden was actually an avid flyer of planes, much like his father. And his father was killed in a plane crash while scouting a prospective area in Saudi Arabia. In 1999, Enron announced an agreement to build a $140 million power plant in the Gaza Strip between Israel and Egypt. And one of the major financiers for the project was the Saudi Bin Laden Group, and they virtually had to halt the project because the Taliban itself, who was the organization that was competing with the Northern Alliance for control of the country of Afghanistan, didn't like the financial deals that they were going to receive through Enron public accountants and lawyers. And so a Taliban representative actually got word to Enron itself and said that if they were going to build a pipeline through the country, you can expect the pipeline to be blown up again and again and again. And so in the spring of 2000, the project was canceled. And Enron later was forced to close due to many of its infamous and nefarious deals that they made, which saw the imprisonment of James Skilling, its CEO, and Ken Lay, who mysteriously died before he was sentenced, or even was to serve his sentence. So over the years, the Bush family and the Bin Laden family became closely aligned. And meanwhile, two of the more prominent Saudis, Khalid bin Mahfouz, who's a friend to the Bin Laden family, and Salem Bin Laden, began investing in the infamous Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or short BCCI, which was founded by a Pakistani businessman named Aga Hassan Abedi, and who had connections throughout the business and criminal world. The BCCI Bank would later come under intense investigations due to dealings with some of the world's most notorious criminals, Abu Nidal, the Medellin cartel, Manuel Noriega. And so the bank would be forced to close its business after the British government set up an independent inquiry which found a large-scale, massive corruption and financial ties to nefarious agencies, including the CIA and Pakistan ISI, who created multiple accounts, fake accounts, inside the bank. And so this was basically money laundering and money washing itself through the drug trade primarily from the Helmand province. Frank Carlucci, the former Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan, had begun visiting the Bin Laden family in Jeddah. Trips to the Bin Laden family made by other notable U.S. officials such as George W. Bush, James Baker, who was the White House Chief of Staff and the U.S. Secretary of Treasury under Ronald Reagan, led many to believe that the Bush-Bin Laden alignment would become the de facto force, not just in the United States, but in the region for the foreseeable future. It was here that Frank Carlucci would finalize a deal with the Bin Laden family, start investing with the Carlyle Group, in which Carlucci served as its chairman in hopes of having many of the prominent Saudi billionaires to start for prospective investments. The Bin Laden family financial relationship with the Carlyle Group began way back in 1994. At that time, they committed $2 million to a buyout fund, which was the Carlyle Partners 2, a tiny fraction of the $1.3 billion raised for the fund. And much of that money was invested in the fund gradually over many years. It wasn't a singular payment. The Carlyle Group is an American multinational private equity corporation. It has 31 offices across 6 continents. And after Carlucci's meeting in Jeddah, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, a Saudi billionaire and philanthropist, began investing heavily in the company. Later reports confirmed that the Bin Laden family invested $2 million into Carlyle's $1.3 billion dollar fund in 1995. And Carlucci would also hold a position with the neoconservative think tank called the Project for the New American Century. This would pose a problem in the future because Project for New American Century proposed a future where the U.S. military would conduct military operations throughout most of the Middle East over a period of 20 to 30 years. Shortly after the attacks of September 11, 2001, Bin Laden, who was considered the black sheep of the family, was immediately fingered as the primary culprit behind the attacks. Now, because of this put enormous pressure on the Bin Laden family, who had residency and financial dealings inside the United States. And so on October 14th, 2001, U.S. Saudi Ambassador Bandar bin Sultan, who has a nickname, Bandar Bush, due to his very strong and close dealings with the Bin Laden family, with the Bush family. And he also was an ambassador under Reagan, Clinton, and George H.W. Bush. But Bandar bin Sultan grew very close with George W. Bush. And so in the ensuing days, with compliance by the State Department led by George Bush, Saudi Arabia supervised the urgent evacuation of 24 members of the Bin Laden family who were stationed in Massachusetts. A lot of the homes in Massachusetts belonging to the Bin Laden family were purchased in the very early 90s. And on October 2001, the Bin Laden family would liquidate all financial holdings with the Carlyle Group. And after meeting with chief executive officers of the firm, it was under mutual agreement that the Bin Ladens would finalize their ties under the wake of the attacks to alleviate any scrutiny. So the Saudi Bin Laden Group continues to prosper even today. Although in recent months, it has transferred approximately 35% of their company stocks to the Isadima holding company, which is owned by the Saudi Ministry of Finance. But at no point during or after the attacks did we see a break in the relationship between the Bin Ladens and the Bush family. In fact, many years after the attacks under the Obama administration, we continually saw the State Department continue its strong relationship with the Saudis, and also repress any investigation into Saudi financing with certain hijackers, and they would be Khalid al-Mihdhar and the Wafa Hazmi. And so the families have hired Motley Rice, and because of this, they created the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which is called JASTA for short. It's a law passed by United States Congress that narrows the scope of legal doctrine of foreign sovereign immunity. But as of recent times, in 2018, George P. Daniels of the Southern District of New York actually allowed the victims' families to be allowed to see new files and documents relating to Saudi financing into the 9/11 attacks, even though that the Saudi kingdom has continually repressed lawsuits, a civil lawsuit purported by these families under Motley Rice and other law firms who have taken an interest in taking on the case. And so we have noticed in the past and to the present day how the United States State Department, with compliance from the Department of Justice and the FBI, willing to cover up Saudi financing into the 9/11 attacks, even at the behest of 3,000 American lives that were killed in the attacks, unfortunately.